I wanted to get to another story. It's a little different than No Dapple, but I think it shows you that how precious water is, and how through government inaction, through racist policies, through building communities on top of lead pipes, mostly poor minority communities, our children are getting sick. So, lead levels in Bronx schools, water, 16 times higher than in Flint, Michigan. Lead levels in the water of an Allenville school tested 16 times higher than Flint, Michigan, according to a letter to parents from the City Department of Education. PS 41 at 3352 Allenville Avenue and IS 158 in Morrisania were both found to have levels of lead higher than the EPA's action level threshold of 15 parts per billion, according to letters the Department of Education sent out to families and staffs at the schools. Lead levels in the water at PS 41 were particularly high, with 5 faucets testing above 100 parts per billion. By the way, as I've reported in Flint, in East Chicago, Indiana, this whole parts per billion and what's allowable is bullshit. Here's the level of lead that should be in water. 0. That is how much lead I want my children drinking. Not 15 parts per billion. Whoever arbitrarily came up with that and said, oh, that's the normal level that we could contain. Well, every person's different. Any doctor will say everybody reacts to things different. So if the EPA says 15 billion parts per billion is the allowable limit, well, I could drink, 15 parts per billion of lead and be just fine. But somebody who drinks 7 parts per billion could be sick. There's no exact science. That's why lead is not supposed to be in your drinking water. A cold water faucet in a 5th floor bathroom for adults tested at 442 parts per billion, the most toxic level in the school. So 15 parts per billion is the allowable limit. A faucet is testing at 442 parts per billion. At IS 158, high levels of lead in the water were found in 3 classrooms: the kitchen, the boys' locker room, the weight room, and the 2nd floor girls' bathroom, according to a notice shared with DNA info by a teacher at the school. The highest levels of lead was in a cold water faucet in the girls' bathroom on the 2nd floor, which tested at 63.8 parts per billion, while the slop sink in the kitchen tested at 52 parts per billion. During the Flint, Michigan water crisis, 90% of 271 homes tested were at about 27 parts per billion, according to a January 2016 Washington Post report. That number, frankly, is bullshit anyway, because they were only testing cold water, which you get lower lead levels. They never tested the hot water, which is where you get the higher lead levels, because the EPA wants to minimize the numbers. They don't want to find higher numbers, because then they're on the hook for more testing and more relief money. However, the lead crisis in Flint stemmed from a chemical problem, while the lead found in New York schools likely come from pipes. The pipes that Republicans won't change because they won't put a dime into infrastructure. City Councilman Andy King, whose granddaughter goes to PS 41, held a press conference at the school on Monday afternoon where he discussed the work being done to resolve the high lead levels and said he was allocating $400,000 for renovations of the school's bathrooms. This building is over 75 years of age, King said. That means what? Anything that's 75 plus needs some maintenance. And that means if we've got to update some pipes, if we've got to update some fixtures, then we must do. I got news for you. Anything above 40 to 50 years old needs fixing, not 75 years old. I guarantee you there's lead pipes that are 30, 40 years old that are corroding around this country. The Department of Education sent out a letter to families and staff on January 27th about PS 41, saying all outlets that had tested above the action level of 15 parts per billion had been taken out of service and will be replaced. They will remain out of service until future testing shows that they are below 15 parts per billion. The same steps will be taken at IS 158, according to the notice. Lead contamination typically comes from pipes that have not been used for an extended period of time, and problems with lead in schools can usually be traced back to a piece of equipment that will then immediately be removed, repaired, or designated solely as a hand washing station, not a station where people can drink water, city officials said. I mean, that's bullshit too. It doesn't you typically come from pipes that have not been used for an extended period of time. They come from pipes that are used constantly as well, that are corroding. So this is city officials trying to minimize, quote, parents can be rest assured the water in New York City is of the highest quality in the world, and we have stringent protocols and robust procedures in place to ensure that water in school buildings is safe for students and staff. Quote, this is standard protocol and there is no reason for alarm. We are continuing to provide students and staff with safe drinking water. How do you even make that comment? How are parents supposed to know how long this water has been contaminated with lead, how high the levels have been? You know, all these kids have presumably been at the school for many years. And they're saying, oh, this is just protocol, nothing to see here. You can be assured this is standard protocol and there's no reason for alarm. I got news for you, parents. There is reason for alarm. If your kids have been drinking this water, as Cenk has pointed out many, many times, lead affects your IQ, especially in children. Lead affects your behavior. Lead affects mood. Lead affects everything. It's not a coincidence that high lead levels are connected to high crime areas. But the Department of Education says nothing to see here, nothing, no alarm. It's like Flint, said for a year and a half, nothing to see here, no harm, no problem. Somebody just pointed out it could cause autism too. Correct. Lead is a neurotoxin that can be harmful when it gets inside the bodies of children and adults, particularly children under 6, and it could impair a child's growth, behavior, ability to learn, according to the city. So that's the Bronx, which is in New York, where I live. So I will be, I'm making calls to try to speak with people there, and I'll probably go down there if I have time to report on it. Why this is important, and it's connected to Standing Rock. Standing Rock is, you're talking oil. Here you're talking lead. But the bottom line is water is under attack in the United States of America. Let me repeat. Water is under attack in the United States of America. And let me tell you something, my friends. Can you imagine the riots in the street if Americans thought their alcohol was tainted? Can you imagine how many hillbilly rednecks, and the trolls who come after me would be out in the streets with their AR-15 if their Budweiser was contaminated? Apparently, if it's your water, conservatives, that's the price of doing business. Energy independence. We gotta have oil pipelines. This is the safest way to transport it. We want to get off that foreign oil dependency. Let me tell you something. If it was their booze, they'd be out rioting, and so would Fox News. Water. If you missed that day in class in first, second, third grade, water is the number one essential in life, followed by food, followed by shelter. My number 4 is sex, but you name yours. So whether it's Standing Rock, whether it's the Bronx, whether it's Flint, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Milwaukee, which has problems now, Cleveland has problems, Florida has water problems, California has water problems. I mean, if you Google your state, I guarantee you'll find some water issue. It's everywhere. What should you do? I'm a journalist. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I would become very aware. I would do more than just press the share button, which you should do. I would do more than subscribe to youtube.com/TYTpolitics, which you of course should do. I'd get on the phone with your legislator. I'd organize a protest right outside your legislator. Don't wait till a pipeline gets approved. Ask them, I want my water tested. Tell them, I want to know your contributions. Go to opensecret.org. See how much money your politician, your representative, your senator takes from oil and gas companies. And see their voting history. There's a connection between what money they get from oil and gas and how they vote. And it's not just directly from oil and gas. Guess what? When Cory Booker votes against a bill that would make it cheaper for imported drugs to come to America, when he votes against that, he's not just voting against it because he gets a lot of money from pharmaceutical companies. He's also voting against it because he gets most of his money from Wall Street banks. And guess what Wall Street banks are heavily invested in, pharmaceutical companies. So it's all one big circle jerk, folks. So my point is, the politicians are doing the wrong thing, not just because they get money from oil and gas, but because they get money from big banks that are heavily invested in oil and gas. Look at Wells Fargo. Look at Bank of America. Look at Citigroup. Look at JP Morgan. I mean, Deutsche Bank. The list goes on. All invested in Dakota Access Pipeline and many other oil infrastructure projects. OpenSecrets.org. It should be your Bible. That's where I go to find out about donations to politicians. They are the best. They have every year, how much money a politician gets from their campaign committee, as well as super PACs. The last point is, I think that whether this pipeline goes through or not, you got to fight peacefully. Go to a protest. Call your local legislator and make them feel it. And you know what? The time is the next time is 2017 and 2018. There's going to be elections this year for governors and local legislators. Next year, the midterm elections. Let's primary these fake progressives. Whatever fake progressives are up, we're going to primary them. Cenk is doing so through Justice Democrats, trying to get the milquetoast progressives out of there. Let's get as many Republicans out as possible. Let me tell you something. 2018 midterm elections, most of the time, young people don't show up. Well, I hope Bernie Sanders woke you up. You can't just show up every 4 years. You got to do it every 2 years. So I'm going to stay on this story. I'm going to look into the Bronx situation. Still keeping tabs on what's going on in Flint and East Chicago. I will probably be going back to East Chicago and Flint sometime in the near future. But we will be covering. Emma Vigeland, our producer, is going to a protest in New York this afternoon for No Dapple. Hopefully we'll have some people in D.C. going to a protest as well. And I will be reporting as I learn more about what the tribe is doing in response to this decision on the easement and everything else. So you could stay tuned. YouTube.com/TYTPolitics, as well as my Twitter, as well as my Facebook. Thanks for watching.